We are live
Just making sure
now.
I get the thing up for chat. Yes, indeed. Just
Okay.
trying to get to the chat here to see if there's anyone in the chat, and then we will begin.
Right.
I really need to get two monitors.
Okay. Oh, it showed up on YouTube now too. Cool. I should probably mute that so I don't get feedback.
Maybe just maybe, but that should be fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can start by I'm going to tell people a little bit about what I do on this channel, which is I create fantasy uh, content for tabletop RPG systems, and I also do videos on mythological creatures and culture there, as far as that goes. Go ahead and say a little bit about yourself there. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself then, friend?
All
Yes.
right. So, obviously my screen name is Dracovitch, but you can call me Seth. It's easier to pronounce and much shorter. I make homebrew content for tabletop RPGs as well, mostly for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, though I have been known to dabble in some older editions as well. I am also a personal writer of science fiction and fantasy, and that's where a lot of my homebrew content stems from, my stories and novels that I've written over the years.
Cool, cool. Now, because we've been friends for oh, like a decade.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
So, like, thank you for again doing this interview, and I would, if you would also like tell me if chat is so I can read these interview questions because it's a little hard for me to do multitask here.
Yeah, I got you. I've got both the YouTube window open muted, and I can see comments posted here. Uh,
Okay. So
so if something pops up, I'll hopefully be able to see it.
absolutely. So let's see here. We'll jump straight into the interview. Let me see if I can understand this question properly. Could you share a bit about your creative process while developing new content?
Yeah,
And
sure. Continue.
how do you balance originality within the current fifth edition framework?
So, a lot of what I do when it comes to creating content is, again, I like to write, and I've been writing stories for years. And a lot of times, what I'll do is I'll take a concept and think to myself, how can I put this in the constraints of fifth edition? Like, what do I need to do to take this and make it a game mechanic without losing the flavor or like what makes it unique? And the way I balance it towards fifth edition is I tend to do a lot of just, I guess, for lack of a better term, playing by myself. I'll sit and I'll open an online web browser D&D like Foundry or Roll20, and I'll put what I'm working on in there, and I will run actual scenarios. I know a lot of people are big on just crunching numbers and seeing what's balanced based on that. I've never liked that. And that's not saying that people that do that are necessarily wrong. There are tons of creators that do it, and good for them. So I'll sit there and I'll create these scenarios, and I'll run a D&D session by myself. I'll just do whatever it takes to, like, if I have to test a class, let's put it up against, let's make a few different versions of it, have a few different characters, they're all that class, maybe different archetypes if I've got archetypes written down, and throw them in a little combat encounter and see how they do. Um, I will say that a lot of my work kind of airs more on the powerful end of 5th edition, the more modern 5th edition, whereas
Mhm.
you can tell over the years how 5th editions become more complex and the quote unquote power creep has kind of sunk in. I err more on that side because at the end of the day, most of the content I make is it's for fun. Um I'm not
Absolutely.
trying to make the next, I'm not trying to be the next Matt Mercer, Matt Colville, or what have you. And a lot of actual real play takes place between first and 10th level. So a lot of my focus is going to be how can I make those first 10 levels the most fun they can be, while also treating everything after those levels as worthwhile to continue through the content in those later levels.
So you would say that you're more immersed in like the flavor than the crunch of the game.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see here. So that brings up an interesting question. What elements or themes do you incorporate into your creative process?
So there are a few things that when it comes to fantasy and sci-fi, I gravitate towards really hard. Obviously, anyone who's ever seen any of my content knows the big one is dragons. I have been obsessed with dragons since before I could walk. So, like, whenever I'm thinking of something new, a lot of times I'll be like, how can I turn this into a dragon? A few of the other ones is I'm really big into the dark magics, necromancy, blood magic, using your body as a weapon, that kind of thing. So I produce a lot of that content. On the more unique side of things, I would say another big inspiration is I'm really big into astronomy and the science of space, not so much astrology and divination and the general fantasy using the stars to tarot card the future kind of stuff,
Right.
wherein I make
They
things like the Astromancer or the Astromancy spells, where it's literally you are using literal suns and black holes and comets as spells and weapons, as opposed to divining the stars to see the future.
right more based in like logic and science, that aspect of it, rather
Yeah,
than more or less, for better lack of a term, science fiction.
right.
Okay. So, are there any other, like, as far as like, you put any personal themes into your? How does that reflect on your work?
So I put a lot of personal themes into my work. Obviously, but for the people at home, over the years, I've suffered a lot of loss in my life, and I went through several bouts of depression. I used that in two class archetypes specifically. I made the the Oath of Sorrows Warlock, or not Warlock, Paladin, which was very heavy into like grief and loss as a play mechanic. And I made a similar archetype for the Warlock at the time, and they both kind of were made, I wouldn't say in tandem or to work together, but when I was playing around with both of them, kind of figuring out what I wanted to do, because at the time I didn't know if it was going to be a Warlock archetype or a Paladin archetype, I ended up just pulling together all the abilities and kind of throwing them at either one, and I came out with two archetypes instead of one. The other thing is I have a couple snake themed mechanics and archetypes because I'm a huge herpetology guy and I love snakes to death, so I do a lot for that. Um, I guess you could almost say like the dark magic and the necromancy is kind of personal to me. A very, very good friend of mine who is no longer with us. That was kind of like her shtick. She always liked the dark magic. She always liked the necromancy. And that kind of threw me into also really enjoying that kind of magic.
So you incorporate personal themes of loss and grief, and try to make it like for into something constructive. Cool.
Correct. Yes.
As a player in one of your games, the Oath of Sorrow Paladin is really
Yes, that was a lot of fun to make, and it's fun to see someone actually like take it to the fullest potential and just go around defeating spellcasters with the power of sadness.
that's kind of a little more accessible than the power of friendship.
Exactly.
Let's see here. You mentioned that you go about playtesting your content with yourself, against yourself before releasing it. Uh, how do you do that?
So I've been playing D&D since God, 10, 8, 9 or 10 somewhere around there. I've been playing D&D for over 20 years now. And I've been DMing for probably just as long. So I have a really good feel for what makes an exciting combat encounter. So what I'll do is when I'm trying to test something, I will think of what would make an exciting encounter for what I'm testing, and I'll throw again. Maybe it's just one special new test thing on the board with some existing stuff to see how it fares, and then we'll start adding more and see kind of where the line is drawn. Like, how many of whatever CR enemy can a single character of this class take on at once? Like, is it more or less than something of a comparable fighter or wizard or druid or what have you could do? And then you start adding more. It's like, okay, well, if they can get to 3 monsters of this CR, what if I add a second custom class? How far can they go? And I will just play the game like I normally would for a group of players, obviously without all the flavor and flair. I'm not going to sit here and narrate myself. This is a testing zone. But as far as the
Mm,
combat goes, I literally just play it like I would a normal game.
right.
Just I'm making all the choices instead of just some of them.
Mm. So I obviously can't plan or strategize for every scenario, but it does knock down a lot of them. Yes.
Yes, correct. Yeah, there's if I were to try and plan and strategize for every scenario, I'd never produce anything because I'd still be here wondering about every little nuanced position in a game that has so many RNG elements. Yeah, you do the best you can and then you work out the rest of the kinks when people come to you and say, "Hey, I played this in my game and this happened."
Now, are there any challenges you face when creating homebrew content, and how do you overcome
So, the big challenge for me is uh I would say it's twofold. One, it's has it been done already? And I don't mean that in the sense that other homebrew people have made content like it, but is there something in the official content that does what I want to do? 9 times out of 10, because I think really outside the box, it's not the case. Uh, I guess a big one was when I wanted to make before the Astromancer came about as a full class, I was going to do a space themed archetype for every character,
them?
existing character class. And then Wizards dropped the Stars Druid. And I was like, okay, well, I don't need to do this. So I kind of shelved the entire project for quite some time until uh, I got into this character that I was writing for a not D&D related thing. Uh, and like the concept of her being an astromancer really called to me. So then again, what a lot of times I'll do is I'll take these characters I write and I'll try and make them D&D characters. And I couldn't make her work as a Stars Druid, and I couldn't make her work as a wizard or a sorcerer. And at the time, I had a sorcerer archetype that was space themed, and I didn't like that. So I said, "To hell with it! I'm just gonna make a whole space themed class." So a good chunk of it is finding that fine line where you have to find a reason for something to be mechanically unique. Now, obviously, things that I've made like the Primeval Champion or the Dracomancer, where you're literally riding around on a dinosaur or a dragon, we don't have that at all in D&D. But
Right.
whenever you make another full caster, when we already have so many, it has to be you have to have a draw to it. And the other thing that is big, the big challenge when making content is if you can just even make it work. There are tons of things that I have sat there that are in my little test folder that I might never come back to because it's either mechanically it's too complex, or there's no way to not make it super powerful, or trying to make it actually strong and worth playing just takes too much time and effort into it. There are all these little things like there you if you have an idea, you can't always just translate it to paper one to one, obviously. But
Right.
then once it's on paper, how do you fill out those paragraphs? Like if you want it to deal a certain type of damage, how far can you go before you have to start thinking about, oh, well, if it's a single damage type dealing whatever class archetype, how far do you go before you realize at some point you're going to have to put in there that it's got to get around resistances and immunities? Because if you have a DM who just shuts down your entire class, that's not fun for the game.
Right.
Or you see some of it in some of my astromancy stuff and some of the astromancy spells, but making spells that create objects that then do the thing the spell does. It sounds really simple, but it's actually kind of complicated because you're making a spell that's not creating like a creature token like conjure animals or summon shadow spawn or whatever. You're just making a spell that creates an object that does what that spell does. And that comes with a whole, okay, well, now the object that you create has to have either hit points or immunities. Now, how far out does the spell go when it's not just a radius? It's a radius coming off of an object that already exists. Lots of little things that go into wondering whether or not how simple or complex it can be before you realize the effort's not worth the outcome.
Right. So you have particular challenges with uh, spells that create objects, and you just usually don't bother with that. Yes.
Yeah, I have one archetype in the Astromancer creates an object that does something special. It's the Singularity archetype, the Black Hole Summoner. You summon a black hole, the black hole is an object. The object of the black hole creates an aura that does things. And then the spell side of it, there is an 8th level black hole spell that does similar. And then there is a 6th level spell that creates a sun that is an object that generates light and has different effects on it. I think those three are probably the only ones I'll ever touch that do those kinds of things because they're really messy and wordy. But once you understand how they work, it's easy to figure out what they do. It's just getting to that point.
And we all know how much problems I have with wording. So
And we all have problems with wording. Even I sometimes, because I'm real big in trying to stick to official syntax. It
yeah,
it bites me sometimes, but it's there. And a lot of the changes to the way D&D is doing syntax, I've gone back and I've started rewriting things.
yeah.
But sometimes there is no official wording for something you want to do, and you just kind of have to wing it and hope for the best that it makes sense in the moment.
Speaking of which, like, do you have any stories about any kind of unique or innovative content you've made?
So the most popular archetype I've ever made is, or not archetype, class I've ever made is the Maledictor. For the uninitiated, the Maledictor is a paladin style class, except instead of smites, you stick a magical curse on the enemy, and bad things happen to them while they're cursed. If you're familiar with Matt Colville, his Ill Rigor is similar. Um, at the time, I hadn't even known about that class when I was developing the Maledictor. It was just kind of a happy coincidence that they're not the same, but their original incarnations were similar. I know the Illrigger's changed a bunch since he first thought it up,
Right.
but at the time when I was making the Maledictor, it I honestly forget why I made it. It's been so long. It was the second full class I ever made. But it was the concept of a character that cursed the enemies, but the curse wasn't a spell like Hex or Bestow Curse or what have you. It was a mechanic, and it was really unique in the sense that I don't think a lot of people had seen anything like that before, because even now when people message me about old documents they can't find anymore or things that I've done, I get more people talking and asking about the Maledictor than anything else. And
Oh,
it's I guess the Great Worm is the other one because it's a fully customizable dragon, but as far as just like projects that are sane in scope, because I do not consider the Great Worm sane in scope in the slightest. Uh, the Maledictor is probably the standout. I personally wouldn't consider it my, I guess, standout or best work, um, from my personal perspective, but the community at large seems to really gravitate towards that. So I pay like special attention and care whenever I need to go update it or mess with it because it's been set in stone for years now and people like what it is currently.
right. So the Maledictor, by community standards, is your most popular
Magnum
class.
opus, yeah.
So that stands to ask, what is your favorite creation you made, class-wise?
So I think If we're talking about classes specifically, there are two. And they are very different in the way they work, which is why I'm putting them two. The first one is the Primeval Champion. It is the Dinosaur Companion class. Uh, I'm a big dinosaur fanatic. And Wizards hadn't done anything with dinosaurs at all by this point. They still haven't really. The Bigsby's giant book was supposed to have the Unearthed Arcana had like a dinosaur druid theme that never came to light, even though they put art for it in the book. But this was years before that. But I'm a
Yeah.
big dinosaur fanatic, and I was testing the waters with what I could do with pet classes. It's not a very well kept secret that I hate the way Fifth Edition handles pet classes. Um, because the pet always comes out as more of feeling like a mechanic than it does an actual entity you're supposed to be fighting in tandem with. Uh, Obviously, I'm not a big fan of the Beastmaster Ranger, for instance. Um, and I was building a character. This was back when I was working on my dinosaur themed plane Draconava. And I was building an NPC for it, and I wanted to try and build a sheet for that character instead of just being like, oh, okay, well, they're a fighter and they have this NPC stat block dinosaur companion. I wanted to try and make it work as a class, and it didn't, and it pissed me off. So I thought, well, maybe I should dip my toes into making a pet class, a dinosaur themed pet class. And I knew it was going to be kind of controversial at the start because, again, I'm treating your animal companion, this dinosaur, as almost a second character you're playing.
Right.
Obviously, a lot of the mechanics rely on the two of you working together, and you're playing both of them, unless your DM really wants to play your dinosaur for you. Uh, so you have the challenge of I have to make this class that is technically two characters in one, and I want to go the full route with it. So I gave them each a unique stat block. I gave them all abilities that they could use without their character, the person character. Obviously there's a lot that as the person character does, the dinosaur does better. And when I built the document, I built a whole section about customizing them, like skills, different feats that would be applicable, different ways you could play it, just the whole shebang. Uh, so that I'm really really proud of that, and to an extent, you can also say that Dracomancer is in the same vein because that is another pet class. Just you have a dragon instead of a dinosaur. But I built the Dracomancer well into my tenure of understanding how my personal creation style is, so it was much less of a difficult project than the Primeval Champion. The other one I'm super fond of is the Astromancer, my space themed full caster. Mostly because I built it. I built the Astromancer off a character concept that was near and dear to me, and then that character kind of became toxic in a way to my mental health. I won't go into it. It's a really weird story. So I
Fair.
had to retire that character. And then I was sitting on the Astromancer one day, and I had kind of put it down because I had retired the character that the whole class was based on. And I guess you could describe it as I had an epiphany of an entirely different character. I forget. I think I was sitting at work in the break room one day back when I worked at Target, and I was scrolling. I was waiting on my ride because I didn't have a car at that point, and it's miles from home. I couldn't walk, and I was just scrolling through all my different websites that I would browse to get inspiration for D&D, and it just this one concept just clicked, and I can't like it was a piece of art that has nothing to do with the character that ended up being made that revived the Astromancer. Just something about that character's style clicked. And I was like, I want to make a character up with this style. Don't want to use the art for the character. Don't want to like base them around what I'm looking at, but I like the style. So I built this basically goth chick character, and I didn't know what I was going to do with her. I had the style and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And one day while I was working on her as a character, not quite a D&D concept, I ran across some of my Astromancer notes. And I thought, well, okay, let's apply her to this. And it was like everything fell perfectly into place. I knew exactly from that moment what her special skills were, what her personality was, why she was the way she was, and it inspired me to finish the Astromancer. And it's been one of just not even just from that character perspective, from like a building a D&D spellcaster perspective, I think it's one of my favorite full caster classes that I've made.
Let's see here. So obviously, you taught me a lot about how to create homebrew content from when you started working on it.
Mm-hmm.
Out of curiosity, do you have any favorite work that I've done so far?
I think so far my favorites is those fun little dwarf brew spells for Stellanor you made.
Mhm.
Those were a lot of fun, and I was surprised how often they were able to make a difference in combat.
They were fun little thematic spells, though. Yeah,
Yeah, they
they
were
were.
great. They were wonderful.
Let me check, see if chat's anything in wants to chat. Oh, Cole Lopez, hello.
Hello.
I am sorry I didn't get to your chat earlier. My bad. I am trouble seeing, so it's
He
kind of.
has trouble with eyesight, and I go on tangents and just kind of tunnel vision into whatever I'm saying. He
But
can
yeah.
attest, I do it all the time.
uh, so do you have any advice for people who want to get into homebrewing content for tabletop RPGs?
So, what I would say is don't be intimidated. Um, there are a lot, and I mean a lot, of people that do homebrew content for hell, just in retrospect to me, fifth edition. And there are a lot of big names in the homebrew community, and not just people like Matt Mercer that publish books or Matt Colville that has his own company. Just like off the top of my head, thinking on just the Unearthed Arcana, the fifth edition homebrew subreddit, there's Laser Llama, there's Kibbles Tasty, um, there's what is his name? The one that I just don't remember the name of. There are a lot, and like you can if you don't everyone has something that bothers them. Um and what I would tell people is if you make something that someone else also takes a crack at, like let's say you revise a class, like say you don't like the way the fighter in normal fifth edition works, you want to make your own version of the fighter. Um Always be aware that other people are doing that as well. And don't be discouraged if a big name comes out with their fighter rework and it's just straight up better than yours in every way. Like, obviously, don't plagiarize them, but take it as a learning experience. See where you can improve based on what people think of that one. And another thing is don't take criticism personally. Some people might think your stuff is overpowered. Some people might think your stuff is underpowered. Always listen to your community and see what you can take away from that.
Yes, but thank you for uh, joining us in the chat. I really appreciate you coming to visit.
No, you're fine. I'll do one of these whenever you want.
Oh no, I was talking about the person in chat, but also to you too.
Yeah, well, everyone in chat's always welcome. It's a chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as the campaigns you've run, which has been your favorite so far?
So, of the campaigns I've run, take it from the top because I've run a few now in 5th edition specifically. There was the first Draconava campaign, which was the dinosaur-themed plane with lots of dragons. That was the first, like, full from scratch homebrew world I built for a D&D game in a long, long time at that point at the start of 5th edition, because I didn't really do that with 4th edition, and then I did that a lot in 3.5. So Drake and Ava has a very special place in my heart. I've run 2 campaigns in Draconava, and the world's been irreparably changed in both of them. So much so that the third one is the final iteration, and it's not going to change from that. There was the Spelljammer campaign that was co-DM'd by me and my wife. That one was fun if it was a bit of a mess, and unfortunately it ended prematurely uh, due to some real-world chicanery. And then there was Draconava 2, and then after that there was Stellanor.
My favorite.
Stellanor, yes, your favorite. Stellanor was basically a rework and retelling of my most popular among my friends 3.5 campaign. Uh, and then updated to fit 5th edition, and then I changed a few things, then the party went wild. But then there's Multiverse, which is obviously the one I'm going to say is my favorite, because it is literally the setting that encompasses all 20 years of my novelizations and the whole shebang into one, where you all get to be plane hopping super soldiers working for an interplanar organization. And it's
I
fun because a lot of it is me getting to tell you guys about the world that I've been writing since I was 6, and you getting to experience that for the first time. And like, I'm not gonna lie, it's super heartwarming and tear jerking when I introduce something that's near and dear to me in multiverse, and people just latch onto it.
What has been your favorite point in multiverse that people have watched them to so far?
You cut out. Say that one more time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're
Which
fine.
point in multiverse has you the most was the most notable for you that you liked?
I would say most notable is broad enough to where I can give a few different answers. Um, I would say the first one is just how quickly the party latched on to Alna, the NPC character that I wrote, because she was the character that kind of healed some of my issues at the time, and she was always canon to the setting, but I never really did anything with her, and I was writing her story, and I figured I'd intertwine it with the parties, and I love how she's just become one of the gang. The other one is uh I think in a broad sense, more so than a specific sense, the party, or I guess the play group, you guys, the party, really respect the lore to a degree that I generally don't expect. Like, hey, yeah, no, resurrection doesn't exist in this world, but there are ways to come back from the dead. And now you find this half-written scroll of true resurrection, and everyone's just kind of like, wait a second, that doesn't work. So now there's this mystery as to why this is here. uh, I would say, as far as like maybe an encounter goes, uh I thought when you guys fought the mystery dragonette assassin in the college courtyard, that was a lot of fun, because the party didn't know what was coming, and
Oh,
it was a character concept that the party had never dealt with before. Like, you're all mostly these fantasy themed characters with a little bit of modernity and grace and glacial, and then this dragon chick fully decked out in like a Mandalorian-esque sci-fi armor and gun drones and a sci-fi style sniper rifle just comes out of nowhere and starts firing like at you guys specifically. That was a big moment that I thought. um I think
that
another.
was.
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No, you continue.
that I will not lie to you. That was I did not see that happening whatsoever. Haha, from the blind guy. That's okay.
Yeah. Uh, I think the other thing I really like about the multiverse campaign from a player perspective is your characters really give a damn about each other. So when I pull on like the heartstrings of your backstories, everyone's all in. It's like, okay, cool. Grace was captured by the Institute and got away, and that's her backstory in a very, very brief term. And then I don't bring the Institute up until like what, 3 or 4 sessions ago, and Grace is foaming at the mouth to kill them all. And the party's like, yeah, let's do this. Let's go blow up an Institute base. No questions asked. Or when, the Light of Divinity, the crazy religious cult shows up, and everyone's like, yeah, no, the boss said these are kill on sight, so we kill on sight. And then you end up capturing one, and now everyone's like, what do we do with her? We didn't think this through. We turned her into a turtle and threw her in a cell. Like, it's just fun to have. I guess a good broad point is, because I've been writing for this multiverse story since I was 6 years old, I have such a handle on the story and the multiverse and the universes they're in as a whole, to such a degree. It's a lot of fun to put other people that aren't me playing characters that I didn't write into this world and have them respect it to such a degree that every new experience is just as fun for me as it is for the party.
Mhm. So, where can people find you as far as like your content?
So I put all of my content in two places, and I'm going to give you one of them because it links to the other. I have a Discord, the Shadowheart Forge Discord, which you can find on my subreddit, reddit.com/r/Shadowheartforge.
Okay. And I will edit the description of this video with the links for that as soon as possible.
Yeah, I'll PM you the subreddit link.
Thank you all for coming to this interview, and it's been a lot of fun and very insightful and very eye-opening as far as things.
Yeah, you ever want to do more of these with new questions, I'm always down.
Absolutely. Give me a moment. Can you tell me what the stream duration says, please?
36 minutes and 50 seconds.
I mean, that's fair. I'm cool with that. Let's see here. One moment. All right. So, thanks to people for coming. I hope you give this video a like, and if you found any value in it, please subscribe for potential future live streams and interviews. Bye.
Bye.
We're good.